it's really, we are stuck in this paradigm that feels inescapable because the tech lords run everything and we are stuck in their game. Welcome to the Represent More podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Clarkson.
And I'm your co-host, Shireen Clarkson.
We've got a fun episode today, I think. We're going to be talking some surveillance pricing, right, Shireen?
That's right.
And then just kind of see where the conversation takes us. I noticed when I introduced myself, I really inflected Clarkson. I went almost like I'm questioning what my name is.
Yeah.
I'm Ryan Clarkson, like the Ron Burgundy.
Yeah. You should channel him today. Channel Ron Burgundy. That'll
Should
be
I
fun.
just do the whole episode as Ron Burgundy?
Yeah. No.
I don't know. That is a funny movie, though.
Yeah.
Speaking of, last night I watched this newish Lamar Odom documentary.
Oh.
Do you know who that is?
Yeah. The basketball player.
Right. The Laker champion.
Right. Yeah.
Who was married to Khloe Kardashian.
Yes.
Khloe, right?
Yes.
What a wild story.
Yeah, he had some addiction issues, and then they had some cheating going on in the marriage. Yeah.
Right.
Was it an interesting documentary?
Yeah, and he had this. He OD'd in the Love Ranch. The Nevada brothel.
Oh.
Yeah. It's wild. But he survived. He had like 6 heart attacks and 12 strokes or something like that.
Wow.
During that episode, during that OD.
Oh, wow.
And he lived through it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's insane. And he's living a normal life right now. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
The will to survive.
That's Is that you recommend the documentary?
I thought it was very interesting. I thought it was
I know when you turn, I recall you turning it on and my eyes instantly closed. Not because of the documentary, but just because it was 10:30. And that is my body shuts down at 10:30 p.m.
That's true.
On the dot. Yeah.
You like to flip through the previews for Netflix for about 45 minutes and then just pass out. Mm-hmm. You never actually commit to any particular show.
That does happen some nights, yeah.
Just over and over and over again, not committing to anything, and then
I know.
Pass out.
I know. There's just so much content. It's hard to pick sometimes.
So many different things you want to see.
So many options. I think that's a problem in society in so many ways, not just social media, not just Netflix, but like in general. There's just so many options available to us in this city and in this time period of life that it becomes hard to...
We built this city.
It becomes hard to commit to things just generally. So, pros and cons about, with having a lot of options.
Lots of options.
They say that's why divorce rates are even higher now than ever before, because the options are just that much more available through all the apps and all the, social media and all the different things.
I thought you were going to tie that to TV. You were getting the papers ready.
No. You did get very annoyed with me, though, the other night when every time I start scrolling through the Netflix or whatever.
I like to commit to something.
Pick a show. Yeah.
I want to actually see something, enjoy it, learn from it.
But what's interesting about you is that you, because you're so anti that practice, that behavior, you choose super quickly. So you choose like the first thing you see, and it's often awful. Come on. It's true.
Okay.
We've watched a lot of...
Like what? Give me one example.
Where I just have to... Well, it's often a like future...
You don't like
futuristic.
sci-fi?
No, I like sci-fi if it's a good plot and it's not just some crappy futuristic,
Are you talking about Game of Thrones?
No, obviously not. Everybody loves that show.
Do you like Game of Thrones?
I don't watch it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Do you think it would fall into that category?
No, I think that's fantasy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's true. That would be more fantasy. All right. Sci-fi.
Is the future? Is that how you see our future? The future of this world?
Maybe kind of. Sci-fi. What about The Arrival? That's sci-fi.
Yeah. No, that was good. No, obviously, there's good sci-fi, but
it's one of my favorite movies, The Arrival. Love that one.
you sometimes you pick those apocalyptic, horrible movies, the bad ones.
Yeah, I like a bad
Or like
apocalypse.
zombie. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
Okay.
How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. I was up in the Bay Area for a couple days visiting my folks and with our daughter, and it was nice.
Yeah.
It's a quick trip, and I'm back. What did you do with your free weekend?
Just it was pretty quiet.
Oh yeah?
I did have a night out with my buddies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It was fun.
Good for you.
Little dinner.
Slip that in there.
Well, I mean, it happens from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to have good relationships, friendships with your pals.
You've mentioned on this podcast before.
Have
I know you find that important, and it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you spend time with your sister. You're going to do some travel with her, right?
Yeah, that's right. We've had this exact conversation before.
Or is it just deja vu all
I
over
don't know.
again?
Oh, I don't know. That would be a trip.
Let's scour the archives. Let's see if we actually have had this conversation.
Okay, you're making me question it now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was all a dream.
I used to read Word Up magazine. Did you know?
I knew you were going to go there.
I've got some swag on today.
You
dusted one of these.
Rocking the swag. Good job.
Yeah,
I like
you
that.
like that?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Good job. Yeah. Should we get into some topics?
I guess, sure. So we're talking about surveillance pricing.
Yep. We're talking about surveillance pricing.
Recently filed this case against Washington Post.
We did. And so can I give a little context
Please.
On surveillance pricing, and then we'll talk about the case.
Yeah, what is surveillance pricing?
So surveillance pricing refers to this practice where companies collect large amounts of data, personal data about consumers, such as your location, the device you're using to browse products and services, your purchase history, how much time you spend looking at a product. So things like that. And they use that information, they use algorithms to tailor the price that you see based on that information. And what they don't do is tell you that they're doing that. So in other words, two people could be looking at the exact same product and at the exact same time, but paying different prices for it.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. As a concept, let's forget about the lawfulness of it, the legality or the illegality of it.
Yep.
Just in terms of fairness, what do you think about that?
There's two pieces of it that don't feel fair. One, that they're monitoring my behavior and collecting that information and putting it into an algorithm that will help their business without me knowing that they're doing that. That's the first piece that feels unfair. And then the other piece that feels unfair is that I'm paying potentially a higher price for it than my neighbor. So there's like a privacy sort of invasive feeling that doesn't feel right. And then there's the monetary piece where I feel like I'm being financially harmed potentially.
I agree. I think the common experience for any ordinary consumer is one price for everyone.
Yeah. Well, look, I think there are instances where there may be different prices for different consumers, such as when you go buy a car. You may end up paying a different price than somebody else, but in that instance, you know that there's going to, and not only do you know that fact may be true, but you also have an opportunity to negotiate.
Right.
So that makes it very different.
Yeah, that's like classic haggling.
Yeah.
You know that people who haggle better than others, to the extent that the counterparty is open to haggling, is going to get a better price.
Yeah.
Right? I know some people, like my father, for example. He's not a haggler. Whatever the price is, that's the price he pays. He doesn't even like the idea of getting into a negotiation like that.
Yeah.
Now, your sister, she will haggle with, the cashier at CVS.
Right.
Right. Over the price of like chapstick or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's but she actually likes the process of haggling.
Okay. So, but listen, I think the idea that consumers are going to pay different prices, like I said, comes up in certain contexts, like the car, buying a car, leasing a car. It also comes up in other contexts called dynamic pricing models. This is something that we're sort of used to, and happens when you try to purchase airline tickets. If you go at a certain time, you might pay more for a ticket than if you purchased on a different day. So but in that instance, the companies are monitoring the marketplace in general. And so we know that type of dynamic pricing might occur based on marketplace monitoring. What we don't expect and we don't know is that companies are actually monitoring us on an individual level and then basing pricing on that. That's what makes the surveillance pricing feel a little more invasive.
So let's actually talk about this specific case. So this is a case filed by one of our partners, Kristen Simplicio, and Yana Hart is also another partner that's on a cross-team collaboration on this particular case against Washington Post. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They filed a case against the Washington Post. What the Washington Post has been doing since about December 2024, we believe, and we're alleging, is they've been monitoring their subscribers' behavior, their subscribers' location, their subscribers' purchasing history, and what they read, what they click on, all kinds of things like that. And they've been increasing the prices for certain customers based on that information. And they started informing subscribers that, hey, your rates are going to be increased. Didn't explain why, and didn't tell them that that's not an across-the-board pricing, but that's just specific to them. And so what has come out recently is that they've in fact been doing this based on, they've been surveilling their subscribers and putting it in an algorithm, and the algorithm has shot out prices for certain subscribers. So we've filed a case on behalf in DC on behalf of consumers and subscribers in this case. And so that's the basis of the case.
Let's just zoom out for a second. The Washington Post is an iconic newspaper, right?
Yep.
I mean, they broke the story on Watergate. They've produced incredible pieces of investigative journalism, and they've been bringing everything from sports and entertainment and business and politics to an international audience for over 100 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And then Jeff Bezos, the owner of Amazon, purchased the Washington Post back in 2013. And that's when they really started to ramp up their digital subscription and other kind of data aggregation efforts, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it's no surprise that the founder and head of Amazon, who purchases the Washington Post, suddenly decides to inject his kind of focus on digital technologies into that business, and that all of this is as a result of those efforts.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment and some fair assumptions there. I think there's a question as to whether the other companies that are owned by Bezos, Amazon in particular, might be utilized as part of their surveillance for the pricing of the Washington Post subscriptions. It's possible.
I mean, it's obvious that they would be doing that, I think, right? And I think even the disclosure that they gave, which is cited in the lawsuit, discusses the ability of the Washington Post and its affiliates to triangulate information as part of the data aggregation efforts, right?
Yep. And this disclosure you're referencing is a disclosure that they recently made to their subscribers
After the fact, right?
After the fact. They've been doing this surveillance pricing and increasing the prices for over a year now, since 2004. But it's
2024?
December 2024. Yeah. And it wasn't until I think around March of 2026 that they started sending out this disclosure along with their emails and communications to subscribers saying that they are their personal data may be used as part of it, as part of pricing. I got to look up the exact language, but this disclosure that they've recently made is likely in response to New York State law that has just been recently passed, which
it provides
requires
for
that
disclosure of surveillance pricing if you're going to use it.
Right, for its New York citizens. And so it sounds like that was probably in response to that.
Yeah, good for the New York legislature for passing that kind of a law that requires such disclosure, because people would want to know that's material to people's purchase decision making.
Yeah, I think it's probably the first in a wave of legislation that's going to come down. Other states are considering it, California being one of them. So we'll see what the other states do, but there's bound to be some legislation around this issue because so many companies are doing it, and we need some consumer protection in this area.
This is probably one of those rare circumstances where people of regardless of political stripe will get behind it. Right? Mm-hmm. Bipartisan support, whether you're liberal, whether you're conservative, you're Republican, you're Democrat, people want to know that they're paying a fair price and that what they're paying is not more than what the guy or gal standing next to them is paying.
Yeah, I would think so.
A loaf of bread is $4 for everyone. It's not $4 for me and $6 for the next person that comes by.
Right.
But yet that's exactly what surveillance pricing is.
Right.
The other thing I was thinking about, you said that, sometimes people pay different prices. Mm-hmm. And the example you cited was, what was the example you cited?
The car, purchasing a car,
purchasing a car. Right. When there's haggling happening and, there's a negotiation that's happening and everybody's aware of the fact that there's a negotiation. You can negotiate harder or you don't have to. And you can just pay the last price given to you. You also see different prices paid in the insurance context, right? But again, that's also different because you're insuring risk, right? And it's obvious to consumers that based on their history and their risk profiles, they'll pay a price which could be more or less than what someone else might pay because their risk profile is totally different depending on, age, experience, criminal history, et cetera, accident history. Right?
Yeah. And again, the key differences there are they are informed of this. We know going in that the insurance companies are looking at this based on those risk profiles. And number two, we can consent or not consent. We can, based on that information. With Washington Post, they weren't telling anyone for a long time. There's a question as to whether the disclosure that they have recently added is even sufficient because it's very minimal. And
I don't think it is.
They're not telling you everything they're doing. They're just giving you sort of a blanket statement at the end that most people either won't see or won't understand the significance of. And there's no option to consent to it or not. I mean, you can stop your subscription if you happen to see that and you understand what it means. But there's no ability to negotiate. There's no ability to really, really meaningfully deal with that business practice that they're imposing on you.
Yeah, I love this case. I'm so glad we're prosecuting it. And I know Kristen's very passionate about it, as is Yana. And I am too. I think this is something that we really need to hold the line on, especially when you consider that the agencies tasked with policing this kind of unfair business practice they've been gutted. There aren't resources available to keep up with all of the companies trying to use information in an asymmetric way to line their pockets at the expense of consumers.
Yeah, there's bound to be more litigation on these issues because the problem is rampant, and it's just going to happen more and more without legislation, without enforcement actions, without consumer cases. Tell me this. Do you think, because the companies are going to say this, the companies are going to say, well, some people will be affected in a positive way because they will be paying less because our algorithm has concluded that they are in a location or in a in a zip code, or for certain reasons we think their ability to pay is less, and so we're actually going to be pricing them less, so they're benefiting from this practice. What do you have do you have a thought about that or a feeling about that?
So disclose it. It's called a discount.
Right.
Disclose it. But that's not what they're doing. That's just something contrived after the fact to try to justify an unfair business practice.
Right. And I also think it's not that they're decreasing prices for those people. They're only increasing prices for others.
Right. It's not like the person paying more is subsidizing a cheaper price below fair market value for someone who can't afford it. That's not what's going on.
Right.
So this lawsuit was filed with what remedies in mind?
So there will be well, it's filed under DC's Consumer Protection Act, and there's an unjust enrichment claim as well. So I think the goal is to get some monetary compensation back to consumers and subscribers who were unfairly and unlawfully charged more, and some injunctive relief to ensure that Washington Post will appropriately inform subscribers and consumers about its activity and what it's doing.
Injunctive relief is to enjoin or to stop something from happening. So here we're looking to stop the unfair business practice.
Right. I mean, I think ideally they don't, they're not pricing people differently and using algorithms, to figure that out based on people's personal data. But short of that, the remedy would be at least tell people that that's what you're doing.
Exactly.
And then
an adequate, prominent warning or disclosure.
Right. So under the
So let me ask you one more question. So I'm not sure if the DC statute that we're suing under, is there something that allows for borrowing a violation of another statute, like a predicate violation? Do you know?
I don't know. I believe what we're suing under are the various subsections of the act directly, and I don't believe we're bringing another sort of unlawful claim and using DC law as a predicate. I don't believe so.
Or using the violation of the New York law. That New York law is really just to show what precipitated the disclosure.
Exactly. I think so.
What law was that?
That's New York's Algorithmic Pricing Disclosure Act, which was passed in 2025. Again, the only state to have legislation on this issue. And what it requires is a clear and conspicuous warning near the price that says this price was set by an algorithm using your personal data. That or something to that effect. And so it's really not meaningful enough for consumers to really understand what that means.
So really, what surveillance pricing does is it allows the seller of the product or service to use the information they've extracted from you to extract as much money as you're willing to tolerate.
I think that's right.
That's really what it is.
Yeah.
What can we get away with? It's so sad. it used to be that companies tried to deliver a product or service and have a real relationship built on trust and respect with their customers, right? You go see Tony at the deli and you know that he has the finest and choicest meats, and you're willing to pay a premium because Tony cares and procures the best meats, and it gives the best service and shaves it just at the level that you want it for your sandwiches when you pack your lunch and you go to work. And we don't have Tony anymore. And it's annoying, right?
There's some Tonys out there. You can stick to the mom and pop shops and, live your life that way. You can try. But we don't live in the 1950s anymore, and there is a lot more efficiency, you could say, and a lot more convenience, you could say.
Okay.
And there's a price to pay for that.
Okay, so the price to pay for efficiency and convenience. Okay, I hear that, and where I hear there's a price to pay for efficiency and convenience, I think no, it's really, we are stuck in this paradigm that feels inescapable because the tech lords run everything, and we are stuck in their game, and we're forced to play their game. And it's increasingly more difficult to opt out of their game. What you're saying is, no, just don't play their game. But they run everything. I mean, there aren't local newspapers anymore. You can't decide to unsubscribe from the Washington Post and go, sign up for some other newspaper because they don't exist. There's just a handful of publishers who publish newspapers, and they all fold up and roll up to like the same handful of huge media companies, right?
Yeah.
So we're kind of stuck in their game in a way.
I totally agree with you. And the comment I made, was sort of to get you going. But
you said that not to disagree, but just to turn me loose, to light a fire under me because you knew I was going to get.
I knew you were going to go there.
Kickstarted.
Yeah, I knew you were going to go there. But of course,
I don't know about that, but
no, it's true. I mean, I think that technology is great to a certain extent. Like, and then we take it too far and we pay consequences. I truly believe that. This show we used to watch, Black Mirror, was sort of all about that concept, and that is what I firmly believe. Technology is great, efficiencies, conveniences, all the great benefits of technology, we can all appreciate. But when it's taken too far and it's in the wrong hands and it's being advanced for the wrong reasons, such as profit, greed, power, whatever, we pay the consequence. And to your point, it is very hard to opt out. I mean, we could go live in a little, you could move to the countryside and try to live, as simply and, out of the way as you can, so that you're not dealing and you're not subject to some of the consequences that we're talking about. But you really can't get away, and you're missing out on.
But why is that the choice? Why is the choice either play by their game and let them extract everything they can from you, or you have to opt out of the game and live banished, off grid?
Right.
Why is that the choice?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's crazy. It's not it's not a real choice.
Why can't it be? We enjoy all the efficiencies and the advancements from technology, but we still ensure accountability under the laws so that businesses have to treat their customers and their patients and their workers and their policyholders. Everyone still gets treated fairly. Why can't that be what it is?
That's the objective. That's what we're trying to do. That's the right question, and that is the question that tends to guide a lot of our work and a lot of our cases.
So, yeah.
So, I mean, don't you think that the type of work and the type of cases we've been doing in the last year, 2 years, and are continuing to look ahead to have changed dramatically because of all of these technological advancements and all of these tech giants that are basically overtaking the consumer industry in a lot of ways? I mean, how do you think our practice has changed in the last couple years, and where are we headed, do you think?
Oh yeah, we've had to adapt. I mean, we are private attorneys general in a sense, where we're filling in regulatory gaps. So we have to go where the harm is. And the harms are increasingly happening in the digital world. I talk about this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The further and deeper we get onboarded from the physical world into a digital world, the more the harms we experience every day happen in the digital world. And so if we're going to police that digital world, we need to evolve with it. We need to embrace the idea of changing as the harms change. And so, yeah, I mean, I look back to 10, 15 years ago. I mean, you and I are both false advertising subject matter experts, false advertising, class action lawsuits. A lot of what we've done in the past, a lot of what we did and still do relate to food and cosmetics and pharmaceutical drugs, but we've expanded into complementary adjacencies in order to meet people where they are. And as consumers and workers and policyholders and investors and patients, as they experience harm and seek to hold wrongdoers accountable, we've had to expand and evolve and grow in order to help them do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we do is very different than what we were doing 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Do you want to talk a little bit about how we've scaled not only with our practice areas, but also with the firm in general in order to adapt to what the need is? And I think it might be interesting for listeners from a business perspective to talk about, from a law firm business perspective, to talk about how we've not pivoted, but expanded our role in that way.
Yeah, I think, sure, I'd be happy to discuss it. The first question that comes to mind that I think that someone would want to know is whether to grow and why you'd want to grow or not. I think we viewed it as our responsibility to grow in order to be able to represent more people and to be more impactful as lawyers who are prosecuting cases that we think are critical to ensuring or enabling the balance between ordinary people and big corporate interests, powerful corporate interests. And the need has grown dramatically over the last decade. So we've tried to grow with the need. We haven't been able to catch up, but we've been able to do more than we were able to do 10 years ago. So, what started out of my apartment bedroom has now grown to 40 plus lawyers and, 100 employees. And we are over a dozen practice areas that we think complement each other very well. And we have at the heart of our organization extremely talented subject matter experts who are able to prosecute these cases and do it successfully. So, I think a lot about that, actually.
Do you think the organization of our firm in terms of the different practice areas and how we lead that, how our partners are leading them, is critical to its success. And do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because that was really all your organizational plan and vision.
Sure. So we've got 10 partners, including you and I, who prosecute, consumer class action cases and now other types of cases as well. And each of the partners lead one or more practice area.
Mm-hmm.
So Yana Hart, for example, runs our artificial intelligence and data breaches, data misuse, data privacy practice area. So our cases against Meta and Apple and a number of other corporate defendants who have committed data misuse and data breaches kind of fall within her practice. And then we've got Glenn Dennis runs our appeals and writs department. He also runs our employment department, and he also runs our healthcare AI cases. So there are very specific practice areas that he has subject matter expertise over.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we've tried to do, is bring in very talented teammates that can run these cases and to a successful result. And I think it's been very effective in terms of how we've been able to grow the firm. So default wise, we have litigation teams within each practice area, and it's usually a partner and supported by a senior associate attorney or multiple senior associate attorneys, and then one or more junior attorneys, and then a dedicated paralegal. And that's kind of the default litigation team, though there is some variance from team to team, just depending on what the needs of the practice area are. But yeah, that seems to work very well.
And so as we continue to grow and continue to scale the firm, do you see that changing or any additions to be made, or how do you see us continuing to scale with that current organizational?
Well, I think about growth and opportunity as kind of one and the same. So, and I think about it along a few different parallels. You can think about opportunities across other practice areas, or investing into further into the ones we already practice in.
Right.
So that I would say practice area is one of them. Another is geography. So jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
We are not only a national class action and mass action firm now, but we're also doing work overseas. We're doing work in the EU. We're partnering with folks in UK and in Canada and even beyond, helping to advise on how to successfully prosecute cases in more embryonic jurisdictions as far as their class action regimes are concerned, since we in the United States have like a 60-year head start over the EU and other jurisdictions. So it makes sense that we would bring some expertise to bear internationally. And so, we speak at conferences on global class actions, and we partner with firms across the pond and throughout the globe. So I think about that, about geographic expansion. And then and then I don't like the idea of growing for the sake of growing. I think, unfortunately, this kind of capitalist system that we have in the United States, which has allowed for tremendous wealth and prosperity, also is, it's fantasy in a lot of ways to think that we can just have infinite growth without ever leveling out or, you know, suffering the consequences of negative externalities, waste, pollution, etc. Right? And so looking at that from our organization's perspective, the idea of growing just for the sake of growing doesn't feel right. We do it with a purpose in mind, to add more talent, to expand product and service offerings to our clients, and to get it into jurisdictions where people aren't getting it now but need it. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah.
So on the horizon, what you'll see is we're going to be, we're going to be expanding geographically. We will probably be expanding into additional practice areas if it feels right and if it reads consistent with, our firm's mission, our vision, if it arises and is consistent with the values and attributes that we have as a firm, then we'll likely do that as well.
Yeah, that's all exciting stuff. I think it's interesting to think about our conversations when we were much smaller, certainly the two of us and some, the 8 of us, 10 of us, when we were much smaller and we were looking to grow. I was always very conservative and you were much less risk averse and more confident in expansion. And now the things we're talking about, seems so much bigger and somehow I'm much more comfortable, and that's just because, we're more established and of course we have a little bit, better resources. And so, plus I think I've seen a history of, okay, it works. Okay. Ryan was right, like on that issue or, and so I think it's been good to have a little bit of the yin and yang between you and I. And
Are you yin or yang?
I'm pretty sure I'm yang.
And I'm yin?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll go by that.
Okay.
Yin and yang.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, it's good.
Agree.
It's good to have some of that. And certainly in the beginning we had that. And I think we're more aligned now because we've sort of come closer together on the vision as it's manifested and it's better established. And now we're very much, we're always aligned. But again, I was more conservative.
I agree with that, Yang.
Thanks, Yen. Yeah.
So having a track record of over a decade now,
yeah,
where we have a real useful data set to see what we did well and where we need to improve.
Yeah.
But then also just really developed established processes that allow us to make data-driven decisions. It feels like it helps minimize the risk, and understand, or at least understand the risk to try to minimize it. And then it maybe it doesn't feel so uncertain like maybe it had in the past to you. Yeah,
and I'll add our people. I feel so good about our partners and our associates and our whole firm. We feel we have a great group, but feeling confident about the people that we have and knowing that they're going to be able to deliver is a great feeling as well.
100%, Yang.
Stop calling me that.
you're the one who took it up.
Yeah, just doesn't. I don't think I'm a Yang.
Okay. Just
in terms of a name. So okay, well that all is nice to review with you. And
we set a mission about 5 years ago to become the most forward-looking, purpose-driven law firm in the world. And over the last 5 years, I think that has given us something to guide our behavior. And we are definitely moving towards that. It's a high ambition goal, right? But it's something that, again, just guides our behavior. And I feel like we are true to that, and we have been true to that, and will continue to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, what do you think about what's maybe the most exciting thing pausing for a second. We are right in the middle of our Clarkson 180 mid-year review process. So every year we do a Clarkson 360, which is our end-of-year review. We look back a year, we look ahead of year, we look at what went right, what we need to improve on. We use it for goal setting, et cetera. Well, this is the time of year where we're evaluating in the middle of the year what's gone right or needs to be improved so far in 2026, and what we want to accomplish. If we need to, reorient ourselves mid-year to get to the goals that we set for the end of the year. So just kind of thinking through that a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on, as we kind of are upon the middle of the year, what's gone well and what we need to improve on? Or maybe it's not something that you've really sat with just yet.
No, I have a few thoughts. I just don't know that.
You don't know if you want to share it to an audience?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, doesn't feel like the right
forum. Is there anyone you want to call out
I'm very concerned about a few people.
Yeah.
A team in particular.
Okay.
No, we're not going to go there.
You're funny. I think that, I'll share one thing that I think has been good. We've had some fantastic results from the first part of this year.
Yeah, we have.
Game-changing results.
Yeah.
So we had our largest settlement felt like a really significant peak.
Mm-hmm.
And then, right on the heels of that, an even higher peak settlement, which has been really exciting, and I think a testament to our strategy, our team, our processes, really all of it. So that's been exciting. And then we've had a couple of things that didn't pay off, not financially, but just in terms of, it didn't yield the result that we were hoping for. And so, just kind of thinking through those issues a little bit, I think it's important to reflect mid-year so that you're not just looking at goals once a year.
Mm-hmm.
It should be something that you go back and you look at periodically and just make sure that you're on track. And if you need to adjust something, that you're able to do that. So this gives us that chance to do that. Should we do Rosebud Thorn?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll start. Yeah, I have a rose. My rose was my visit with my parents over the weekend. The reason being, I think it's such a special and precious time to have your parents healthy and with you, and your child healthy and with you, and just to have both those generations, together is always such a special thing. And I took note of that over the weekend, and so I will express that as my rose for the week.
I like that. I like that one. Gosh, you've got me thinking. Over the 4th of July, we all went to Michigan, to my brother's lake house in Western Michigan, as you know.
Mm-hmm. Right, as we've discussed. Yep.
And we had my niece's son, so my grand nephew.
Which makes me a great aunt.
Which makes you a great aunt, but it makes my mother a great great grandmother. Pam's I'm sorry, a great grandmother. My mother's a great grandmother.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting is
I think it's weirder that I'm a great aunt, but carry on.
But my mother looks so young, and she is so young for a great grandmother.
Do I not look young for a great aunt?
Listen, here's.
I'm not trying to make this about me, but I just need to make sure that that's established. Go ahead with your story.
But a great grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever know your great grandmother?
No.
Did you ever know a great grandparent?
My grandmother is Adia's great grandmother. So
you
yes,
yourself,
I do know
though.
one. No, I didn't know one.
So it's like a rare thing, let alone to have one at 70,
Yes.
is it's compressed generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
My niece had a great grandmother alive. My Nana. I'm sorry, my Nana's mother, Gaga, my great grandmother, and my niece. They've got 5 generations of women in a photo. It's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll put that up instead of the P&L. Instead of the firm's P&L.
What's your rose? Is that? Yeah. I mean, where were you going with that?
I know we're talking about the generations being able to get together and how special that is.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking that is super special.
Yeah.
Especially when you get the older family members, right? With the very young family members, be able to pass along that wisdom is very nice.
Right. Agree.
You know what I mean, Grandma? Listen, it's the reality. We could be grandparents.
I'm a great aunt. Yeah.
Okay. But
that's true.
We're not 35.
Yeah. You're not. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. You are.
Okay. What's your rose, Ryan? Or your thorn? How about give me your thorn or your bud? You need a bud. Have you learned anything this week? Have you grown from anything this week?
I've got a thorn. I'll give you a thorn.
Okay.
God. All right. So, I went to the USA Paraguay game. I loved it. It was so electric in SoFi. Phenomenal. And the country was energized by the USA men's team. Mm-hmm. And rightfully so. They played wonderfully, valiantly. And then Balogun gets a red card. And I thought it was unfair. And he was kicked out of the game when we were to play Belgium. And then President Trump intervenes and contacts FIFA. Right? And next thing you know, the red card is revoked and Balogun's reinstated. And the USA men's team put on just an awful performance. They just collapsed. And I wonder how much of it had to do with that situation, injecting politics into sport. I mean, sport is like the last thing that feels pure and hasn't been co-opted, at least, to a large extent. And I don't know, it just feels to me that is an example of injecting politics into sport. You've got Polymarket and Kalshi and these prediction markets and DraftKings and all of these gambling sites, injecting all of their negativity into sport. And it just feels like the purity of sport is being lost and that we need to course correct. Or we're going to just lose that too.
Yeah.
So that's my thorn.
I'm with you on that. I have to speak up for a second on this topic with regard to the Iranian team, the Iranian soccer team. Every time they finished the game and they spoke to the press, they were asked about the war and how do you feel and what do you, what is it what does it mean? And were you, all the questions, which I understand on the one hand feels like the elephant in the room and like they felt like they had to ask those questions. But on the other hand, it felt unfair that they had to respond to all those questions when every other team is talking about what they did on the field, and what they felt about soccer,
Well, not only that, but they were forced to leave the country after every game.
Oh,
I think they were staying in Mexico City, weren't they?
yeah. That part is totally sad as well. But chalk that up to whatever legalities or I don't know, whatever executive orders and it's all awful. But
again, it's just injecting politics though into sport.
Yeah.
And it doesn't belong there. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants politics injected into sport.
Yeah.
So that's my thorn.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. See, that's why it's nice to end on a rose. So we feel.
Give us a petal. Give us a little petal.
Yeah.
Give us a little petal.
You want me to give you one?
Yeah, just a little petal.
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, here it is. But we can, we have the power in this country to elect leaders very soon who will respect the dividing line between politics and sport and will help us course correct and address some of these, problems that we've been discussing today. And we can do it very soon because the midterm elections are right around the corner. I mean, early November is 3.5 months away, right?
Yep. There's some hope.
We are just over 100 plus days. No, maybe that's my math might be wrong, but it's somewhere around 100 days away.
All right. Thanks for the pedal. Good pedal.
All right. And with that, Represent More is a production of We Are Them Media, featuring me, Ryan Clarkson, and my co-host, Shireen Clarkson. Represent More is produced and edited by Marketing for Justice and Q Michelli, recorded live at our studio in Malibu, California. Alex Ulrich is our studio manager. Be sure to subscribe to Represent More wherever you get your podcasts, and find us on Substack at representmore.substack.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.